Hey everyone, this is Harrison with Wrist Swap. I thought I'd do a little change of scenery, step outside. My dog, Summer, she wanted to come outside too. So I thought, hey, try something different out. What I wanted to think about today was what kind of collector am I? And what kind of collector are you? And mainly, what does that mean? Like, what does watch collecting mean? And, are there certain things you have to do in order to be a watch collector? Because if you watch YouTube videos, you're pretty much either going to be in one of two camps, typically. You're either going to be aspirational towards the higher end, right? So watches that are more expensive, typically, 10,000, 13,000 to, I guess 2 to 3,000, depending on your budget. Or you're going to be someone that says, I would never buy any one of those. No, thank you. Don't talk to me about them. I like my Seikos. I like anything under 1,000. That's what I'm going to stick with. That's what I'm going to love. And I think that people in that second category, frankly, might be happier. I'm going to use an example. The first time I went to a watch store, I remember walking in and feeling very intimidated because it felt ridiculous. At the time, I didn't have the budget to buy anything that was over $1,000. I was saving for a Sinn 104, and so $1,300 on a watch seemed like a fortune, and it's a lot of money for something you don't need, frankly. And so, I felt ridiculous. So I thought, why would I go in there and ask these people, hey, show me a $9,000 Breitling Navitimer, brand new. I'm not buying it, but I'd like to look at it and kind of nerd out with someone. And I've never seen any of these in person. I've only watched videos. So I just told them honestly that I was here. I am going to buy watches, in the future. Right now I'm looking more affordable, but I want to see some of these in person. And most of these ADs, they understand the journey most people go through. They know that, they might sell you a Seiko today, but this is an addictive hobby. In 2 years, they might sell you something that's 4 times that price. Who knows? And the point is that, if you have an AD that's a nice people, they're nice people to be around, and give your experiences in the comments below. But if they're a nice person, they're a normal person, they'll walk you around if they have the time. If they're super busy, maybe they'll say, yeah, come in, these days, or they'll help you out. I don't, whatever. My point is that typically they'll still help you, and gladly. And usually there's 1 or 2 or 3 tops, maybe, watch nerds there, like guys that are really into it. And you usually can tell because they get excited when you know a few things and you ask them questions. So that's what I would say. I would say first off, if you're someone that's aspirational or wants higher end watches, don't be afraid to go into ADs. But more importantly, don't judge your collections based on someone else's that especially you don't even know, right? So like I have a friend, that I haven't talked to in a couple years, and they reached out to me and they had found this channel. And they said they were getting into watch collecting, and they shared their collection. But, as I was talking to them, because we talked on the phone, as I was talking to them, they seemed really reluctant to share what they had in their collection, hesitant to really describe a lot of things. And it seemed, they'd say fillers like not as good as your collection, or not like yours, or, I'm not quite that far yet. And I think that the problem we have in watch collecting is we're so obsessed sometimes with like value for dollar, and I'm guilty of this as much as anyone, that we end up missing that the point of watches is stories. The point of collecting is shared experiences, shared moments, and encapsulating time. They're like little time capsules that stay with you, right? And so they carry with them moments that you've shared. At least for me, that's what they're like. They're stories built into it, into an object. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And so what I was thinking about was, you shouldn't feel bad if you don't have ridiculous, stupid, more money than you ought to have in your watch collection. Buy what you love, buy what you can, and enjoy it. He said it's not like a well-rounded collection, but it is. Like he had a Flieger, right? So he had a flight watch, he had a dive watch, he had an everyday watch, and that everyday could serve as a dress watch. Like, he was set, right? But it didn't have a Rolex, and it didn't have an Omega. And a lot of times people will use brands or Cartier as like a baseline whether or not their collection is set. And I was guilty of this, when I had my first Explorer. It felt different. It felt like I'd made it with my collection. But even then, after a couple months, you go back to a baseline, and then you're looking for the next thing. You're like, oh, well, I see these collections posted on Facebook where this guy has a Navitimer and a limited edition Speedmaster, or he has this Zenith in addition. Like, he's gone into funky, expensive pieces. And I used to take screenshots of them because I was like, oh, collection goals. The problem is I feel like I always felt like mine wasn't that good. It was never as good as that guy's. And that's weird. Obviously, now that I have a YouTube channel, I think people they'll send me messages sometimes on Instagram asking my suggestion or saying my collection is not as good as yours, but here's this. And, I think we all have, maybe not everyone, but a lot of us on YouTube have this feeling of our collection is not as good as this other person. Especially if you get to the higher echelons, like I'll never have Jean-Claude Biver's watch collection or history in watches or experience. I do that with watchmaking too. Like, I'll see people that are tinkering with things or fixing things, and I'll think, well, I'm not that good. Now, I think it's nice to have goals, things to strive for, and watches are a fun thing to explore and to get into and always be searching for more. And then the hunt is a lot of fun. But what I mean to say is, don't be the kind of collector that either looks down on people based on the value of money they have in their watches. And I think that's very few people, frankly. I think there are more people that look down on people that buy expensive watches in the world. But in watch collecting, I think majority of people are very open and happy to hear about whatever you have, if they're true enthusiasts and not just jerks. And then in addition to that, enjoy the process. Enjoy what you're wearing, and don't feel envy over someone else's collection, because they don't know you. They don't care. Really, they care a little bit about your collection and sharing that conversation, but they don't care that you don't have a $5,000 watch. Like, I wouldn't go to watch meetups for the longest time because I thought, well, my watches aren't good enough. They're just not. Or go to a watch event, like, you'd worry about what you're wearing on your wrist. Like, is that the best I can put forward? And usually that can be wrapped around money. But usually at those events, the guy that has the most unique thing, like a jumping hour hand, vintage watch, or a Vulcain Cricket, those are the guys that everyone talks to about it and wants to see, not the guy that's got the $15,000 Rolex because everyone is wearing a Rolex there, So that's what I've been thinking about. I'm thinking about, like, what kind of collector am I? What kind of message do I want to share across YouTube? Because I love making these videos. I do it for free, basically. I mean, I barely keep up with the expenses of making each video. So what message do I want out there? And I think sharing stories, sharing experiences, having fun wearing the watches. I'm going to do a whole series about wearing watches, doing the thing they're meant to do. And that, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. So I've got a couple ideas there, but also what kind of message should people be listening to, And I think the biggest one is, if you're early on in your collecting experience, you're early on in your collecting journey, don't feel like you don't have good enough collection. 1 or 2 watches that show that you're a watch nerd like the rest of us are perfectly good enough for me. That's just my thought process. So this is a little bit long-winded, but I just felt like venting a little bit and sharing my thoughts on collecting and the philosophy of collecting and how we should orient ourselves as a community around new collectors specifically, because I used to be one, and I'm still relatively new compared to a lot of people. So what do you guys think? Leave them in the comments below. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.